Alaska wasn't a destination, it was a test. From the moment I landed on the icy runway, I felt the weight of the decision I'd made. The air hit me like a wall, sharp and unforgiving. The landscape stretched endlessly, an infinite expanse of white punctuated by jagged peaks in the distance. Dr. Calder? I turned to see a tall woman wrapped in layers of fur and synthetic fibers, her breath fogging in the bitter cold. Her sharp features were partially hidden under a thick hood. I'm Dr. Lena Carter. You must be freezing. Let's get you to Frostbound. As we trudged to the snowcat, Carter filled the silence with details about the facility. Frostbound is one of a kind, she said. Buried under 400 meters of permafrost, completely self-sufficient. No one comes or goes without clearance. Perfect for the kind of work we do. What kind of work is that, exactly? I asked, though I already knew. Pushing boundaries, she replied cryptically. The ride was long, the snowcat bouncing over uneven terrain. Carter explained the rules: no outside communication, strict decontamination protocols, and absolutely no breaches of the containment zones. Why all the secrecy? I asked. She hesitated. We're dealing with things that could change the world or destroy it. The lab itself was a marvel. The elevator descended into a fortress of reinforced steel and glass, with pristine white hallways illuminated by cold fluorescent lights. Each level had a specific purpose: dormitories, research labs, storage, and containment. The team was small but impressive. Dr. Patel, the epidemiologist, was meticulous and methodical. Dr. Lyons, the geneticist, was ambitious to the point of arrogance. The junior techs, Samir and Elise, were eager but cautious. On my second day, Carter and I retrieved an ice core from the deepest depth yet, 400 meters. The core was ancient, preserved in perfect clarity. This is history frozen in time, Carter said, her gloved hand hovering over the glassy surface. Back in the lab, we carefully thawed a section under controlled conditions. As the ice melted, something stirred, a microscopic organism, alive and thriving despite millennia of dormancy. Unbelievable, I whispered, staring at the screen. Carter named it Hades, after the god of the underworld. It's beautiful, she said. But beneath my curiosity, I felt a gnawing unease. Some things weren't meant to be found. Samir was the youngest and most optimistic member of our team, a bright-eyed microbiologist who never lost his fascination for discovery. He'd been the one eagerly cataloging samples and documenting thawed microorganisms. It started innocuously. I think I've caught the flu, he said with a sheepish smile, leaning on a counter for support. You've been burning the midnight oil, Carter said dismissively. Get some rest. But by the following day, Samir wasn't just tired, he was weak. His skin was clammy, his lips pale, and his voice raspy. When he coughed into a tissue, he stared at the flecks of black mucus with wide, terrified eyes. What the hell is this? He whispered. We isolated him immediately, suspecting contamination despite his adherence to protocol. As he lay in the quarantine chamber, his condition worsened at an alarming rate. His fever soared past 104 degrees Fahrenheit. His breathing became labored, and his veins turned a horrifying black. The team watched helplessly through the observation window. Samir groaned in agony, his body convulsing. His eyes rolled back, and his fingers clawed at the bed. He's hemorrhaging internally, Patel muttered, studying the vitals on the monitor. By nightfall, Samir was dead. His body was bloated and discolored, veins bulging like ink-filled vines. His pupils had clouded over completely. We moved him to the containment morgue and began an autopsy the next morning. It's like nothing I've ever seen, Patel said, his gloved hands steady as he dissected tissue samples. The virus is rewriting his cells, repurposing them. It doesn't just kill, it transforms. Under the microscope, the virus revealed its horrific genius. It infiltrated the cells, dismantled their structure, and rebuilt them into tiny viral factories. This is why his veins turned black, Carter said, horrified. The virus wasn't spreading, it was remaking him. I couldn't shake the image of Samir's body on the slab, his once vibrant face now a grotesque mask of decay. That night, I pored over containment footage, searching for answers. Around midnight, the feed glitched. At first, I thought it was a technical hiccup. But then Samir's corpse twitched. My heart stopped as his fingers curled slightly, then flexed. His head jerked to the side. And then, impossibly, his dead, cloudy eyes stared directly into the camera. "Lena," I whispered, calling Carter on the intercom. "You need to see this." When she arrived, I rewound the footage. Together, we watched as Samir's corpse continued its unnatural movements. He sat up slowly, his head tilting at odd angles. "This isn't decomposition," she said, her voice trembling. "It's reanimation." After Samir's body was burned, we thought we contained the situation. But 2 days later, Elise fell ill. She followed every protocol: gloves, suits, sterilization. Yet the virus had found her. Her symptoms progressed at an alarming rate, mirroring Samir's: high fever, violent coughing, black veins. By the time she was quarantined, it was too late. "She's not going to make it," Patel said grimly, studying her blood work. "This virus is evolving. It's faster, more aggressive." Elise screamed from the isolation chamber, clawing at the walls. Her voice was raw and guttural, her words unintelligible. When she finally collapsed, we thought it was over. We were wrong. Elise's reanimated body was far more horrifying than Samir's. She didn't move like a corpse, she moved like a predator. Her limbs twitched unnaturally as she crawled along the chamber floor, her milky eyes darting around the room. "She's hunting," Carter whispered, horrified. The realization hit me like a punch. The virus wasn't just reanimating the dead, it was adapting, creating something faster and smarter. Then Elise did something impossible. She spoke. "Help me," she croaked, her voice a distorted parody of her former self. "Please." But her lips didn't move. The sound wasn't human, it was guttural, echoing, as if the virus itself were mocking us. Patel's voice broke through the shock. "We need to destroy all samples now," he said. "This virus isn't natural, it's a weapon." Lyons vehemently opposed the idea. "You're throwing away a once-in-a-lifetime discovery," he shouted. "Do you understand what this could mean for medicine? For humanity?" "This isn't medicine," Carter snapped. "It's annihilation." Their argument ended abruptly when Elise broke free. She attacked a security guard, her movements disturbingly agile. It took 2 gunshots to her chest and 1 to her head to finally bring her down. But the damage was done. The lab descended into chaos. Power fluctuations left sections in darkness, and the infected became bolder, attacking anyone they encountered. Each new victim added to their numbers. Dr. Lyons disappeared, taking vials of Hades with him. When we searched his lab, we found his notes scattered across the desk, detailing plans to preserve the virus for future study. "He's trying to smuggle it out," Carter said, her face pale. "He won't make it far," Patel muttered. That night, an explosion rocked the facility, cutting power to the backup generators. Lyons had sabotaged the lab to cover his tracks. Without containment protocols, the virus was free to spread unchecked. We barricaded ourselves in the operations room, but supplies were limited and morale was crumbling. Patel devised a desperate plan. "We need to get to the surface," he said. "The emergency elevator is still functional, but someone has to manually restart the system." "I'll go," Carter said. "No," Patel replied firmly. "This is my mess. I'll fix it." Despite our protests, he left, wrench in hand, disappearing into the darkened corridors. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Then the elevator roared to life. But Patel didn't return. Carter and I made our way to the elevator, fighting off the infected with makeshift weapons. Their movements were disturbingly coordinated now, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. When we reached the surface, Carter collapsed in the snow. Her breath was labored, and black veins were crawling up her neck. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I tried." Her body convulsed violently, and I had no choice but to leave her behind. The surface was eerily silent. The snow stretched endlessly in every direction, broken only by the distant glow of the aurora borealis. Hours later, a helicopter appeared. The crew wore hazmat suits, their faces obscured by mirrored visors. They asked no questions as they loaded me aboard. I slumped into a seat, exhausted and numb. The horrors of Frostbound were behind me now, or so I thought. As the helicopter ascended, I caught my reflection in the window. My blood turned to ice. Dark veins snaked beneath my skin, branching out like rivers. My eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. I wasn't escaping the infection. I was the infection. The realization hit me with crushing certainty. The men in hazmat suits were rescuing me, they were containing me. The virus didn't stay buried. Reports of strange illnesses began surfacing in nearby towns weeks later. The government denied any connection to Frostbound, insisting the lab didn't exist. But I know the truth. Hades isn't just a virus. It's the end.